Welcome back to another episode of Embodied Engagement here at the Missoula Art Museum with me, Kate Crouch. Today we are in the Morris and Helen Foundation Gallery, and we are looking at Below the Bark, which is a group of artwork by 3 different artists who are examining disturbance ecology through changing climate, and specifically in pine beetle kill, which we can see here in Missoula and in most of the West, and also some of the East Coast as well. So if you're unfamiliar with what's going on with pine beetles and how their rise in population is somewhat decimating our pine forests, then I encourage you to do some of your own research. Today we'll just look at this from the points of view of these different artists. So we're looking at work from Jim Frazier, Tom Musso, and Susie Wolf. All right, and here we have our first piece to look at, and this is by Jim Frazier. It's called Glyph 16. This is an interpretation of actual beetle kill, what it looks like when the beetles chew through the bark. This is our micro aspect for beetle kill, and what we'll do with this is we're going to think about our own bodies as macro and micro and how we connect with the world around us. I think the most simple thing to do is just to start in a comfortable position for yourself, and we're going to use our own hand as a guide for exploring different patterns in our own body, our breath, and how we can relate with these patterns that the beetles create as they're chewing through bark. So I'll invite you to maybe pick up your non-dominant hand and just take a kind of a look at it. You can flip it over a couple of ways and just start to look at all of the fine details of your own hand. Granted, this can be a little uncomfortable for some of us, especially as we get older. We start to see things that are surprising or uncomfortable. So allow yourself just to acknowledge, all right, maybe I've got some more veininess or more wrinkles than the last time I inspected my hand. And you can, as you can see I'm just sort of naturally allowing my other fingers to sort of trace around, going over knuckles and the fingertips. And allow your fingers to just sort of organically start to move. And you'll get this really beautiful, to me, sensation, sort of tickling, and it's almost comforting, but also uncomfortable at the same time. And as you're tracing around the hand, we'll start to match that with breath. And you're welcome to continue just this sort of exploration. Maybe you want to switch hands and trace along the different indentations or pattern. And maybe you want to start to move to the outer edges of the fingertips. There are a number of ways to do this hand tracing in breath, including one of them, which is just to trace the outside of the hand as you inhale and exhale. So you'll breathe in and lift and breathe out, and just allow your fingertips to naturally glide over. And once you become somewhat comfortable with this, breathing in and tracing, allowing yourself to notice all of these different micro indentations, wrinkles, creases, maybe finding new moles. When you're ready, we're going to use this same technique as we trace around the artwork. You're welcome to close an eye or just begin to follow the gaze. Either use a finger as you allow yourself to point and breathe in, or you could trace with your eyes and not worry about moving the rest of the body. Letting your eyes drift up and over this micro representation of the beetle-kill. Noticing how there's crisscrossing patterns, tracks, traces, little different valleys that these beetles took as they chewed their way through. And spend another 5 breaths. Allow your eyes and body to wander, inhaling and exhaling, finding a new pattern or a new path. One more. Exploration with the eyes or the movement and the breath. And then go back to, if you weren't already looking at your own hands, and flip them over. And they can feel a little tingly, so we'll just rub them together. Nice and warm. Big breath in. And the shoulders drop down. If you have your eyes closed, perhaps you can even see that pattern from glyph 16 still kind of behind the eyelids. And then we're going to investigate the next piece of work and another opportunity to use our breath and awareness. So we are here at the life cycle of the Dendrocus jeffreyi, which I know I'm not saying right, but this is the life cycle of these beetles. This is Tim Mousseau's work, and it's a woodcut. And I may not be able to express how much I absolutely adore this on so many levels. Its nature of folding and growing and micro and macro are just, to me, just genius. I feel like I know exactly where this is. Like I've been to these trees, that I've seen this whole scene. And what it really reminds me of is, there's a meditation, Thich Nhat Hanh, who just recently passed, has been a huge influence on myself and his work and his meditations and how he would see things simultaneously as the micro and the macro, and this is really interesting representation of that. At Plum Village, if you haven't seen the movie, with Walk With Me, I highly recommend it. But one of the things that they do at Plum Village, which is the hub for Thich Nhat Hanh's individuals who are following his work, is that they walk. And one of the things they do is they walk through these trees, and the meditation that really has struck me most deeply is his idea of just looking at a single tree and the whole life that this one tree has had. So whether you're thinking about a tree in your yard, if you can look outside and see a tree, or if you just want to use Mousseau's work here, start to acknowledge how whatever tree it is has gone through so many different cycles of birth and death, including its inception of how it could even open from a seed. Our pine trees need fire and heat to even have the seeds bloom and open and grow and germinate. So we start with fire, this element of fire, and if you can feel, sense, and imagine that element of fire and maybe even hear the crackling of a forest fire that is both destroying and creating. And from there, the snow, the rain, the sun, the wind that each and every single tree needs, and it's the years that it takes. And all of these cycles are happening over and over and over again. So we start so incredibly small, and just over time, it seems so it's like obviously a tree grows over time, but when you start to feel, sense, and imagine how much of space it takes and energy, both with these intricate different roots growing out and the microbia and everything that are giving life to these trees over time, it's really arresting almost. What I deeply appreciate about Mousseau's work is that it's the tree and then this whole life of these pine beetles that we're struggling with coming into a new recognition that they are also growing and living in places that they haven't before, and their lives are lasting longer. Before, it would be that these pine beetle larvae, there they are, when it got cold out, they would freeze and they wouldn't be able to survive our cold winters. And with climate change, we're developing a new relationship with our landscape. And that can be, that can hurt. And that can be rough, and it brings up different emotions of remembering trees that have died or places that you've seen even in your own life. So with this idea and this meditation on the life cycles of trees and how things are changing and always changing, just allow yourself to kind of hold those different sensations in your body. And maybe close the eyes and get comfortable as you take another long, deep breath. And allow yourself to think about all of the nourishment that your own body has taken. And it's really lovely. There's a baby in here. So it's fun to see that. But all of the nourishment that your own body has taken, all of the light and dark and growth and food, and noticing how that moves through your own body and sort of how magical that is. And another breath, and just acknowledge all of the work that your body is doing right now, just to breathe. And feel those sensations. And let the memories wash over you. And then take a moment of gratitude just for this movement of food and energy and everything through your own body, relating our little micro selves to this big macro world that we're in. And if it's useful, go back to your hand tracing for a moment. And another breath, and we'll move on to our last artwork. And here we are in the last part. This is this auxiliary gallery, the shot gallery, where we have our last artist's work. This is Susie Wolf's book. Susie Wolf is a bookmaker, and their work is made out of this beetle-kill pine. Bookmaking is really interesting in that almost anything can be a book as long as you can fold it. So these 3 books or folios put together are a really interesting take on the book form. And in this last part, as we think about going from the macro to the micro and how we can build different relationships, I find it interesting that Susie Wolf has taken this tree itself and created it into artwork. So this looks like a beetle-kill pine, and that has been harvested and now has a new life as this wonderful piece of artwork. And here is where I'll invite you to start thinking about what action items you can do, whether it's creating something yourself, maybe finding a down piece of wood and starting to just utilize it in a new way, using it creatively, painting on it. There are different artists that use them as canvases, but just an action item, something that you can physically do that creates a new relationship with these pine beetles that are here to stay. Maybe for you, you don't want to pick up a piece of wood and play with it or draw with it or build with it, but start to formulate a plan for yourself, a way to give back, whether that's volunteering or maybe it's financially or educating someone else. But here is where we start to step into the role of not just being a recipient and an individual, but creating a community and awareness of these different, specifically climate change, but perhaps it's something else that resonates more deeply with you. And formulating a plan of how we can move forward and make that part of our life rather than this distant pulling apart, how we can create more of a community around it. So that will be it for embodied engagement today. Feel free to rewatch. We went through the work of Fraser and Musso and with Wolf here. And we did our hand tracing and the meditation on our bodies in micro, macro, and also, finally, your last bit of engagement is how to engage in our communities and action steps that you can take. Thank you so much for joining me. Have a great rest of your day.